So property is one area. Are there any other areas that they can actually look at?
Yeah, look, absolutely. I think when it comes to deciding where to place your money,
Yeah.
It does come back to what's the structure, right? And also what's the objective that you have for that money. So real simply, you might be a doctor wanting to buy, your first home or, your upgrade, right? So if you've got an objective in mind, then okay, I can put X amount of dollars away. The thing that you want to understand is how long are you going to put this money aside for? Because that's going to determine how much risk you should be willing to take on those funds. If you said, hey, Felix, I've got $200,000, right? I want to get to, use that for a deposit, 20% deposit on $1 million investment property, and I want to buy within the next year. I wouldn't be putting that into the share market that can collapse overnight the minute Trump makes a crypto announcement or, basically my point is you want to be able to assess what you're putting that money aside for.
Yep.
Is there an objective where you need liquidity on those funds, where you need access to those funds?
Yep.
That will help determine what is the best structure and what is the best asset now that we acquire. Because for others, they might be wanting to put money aside for their kids' education.
Yep.
So they're not planning to look at it for the next 10 years or longer. Well, there are actually education bonds or investment bonds that's available to these investors and for your children, where you're not paying any capital gains tax on that as long as you're locking it away for a certain period of time.
Yeah.
Which is huge given the new changes to capital gains tax rules, right? So again, there's a lot of, products and mechanisms and structures available.
Yep.
What is the underlying investment? That's a conversation for another day. But again, I think if you've got a goal in mind that you're setting aside for, whether that's setting aside 20%, 10% of your income, it starts with understanding why. What is the goal? Quantify that goal, and then we can work backwards to work out this is what you need to put aside. Because I guarantee you, all of a sudden you've got discipline in saving. I say this all the time, where when a bank looks at your expenses and they go through your bank statements and they're saying, hey, you can't afford to pay this off because you've been going out to dinner every single night. I guarantee you, you say that I can, don't spend that $100 a night for dinner, and I put that towards my mortgage because it means that I can actually get a loan to buy a house, or I can pay off my mortgage by 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years. Yep. You'd make a conscious decision to do that. So, we're all smart enough to be able to have that discipline in place. We've worked hard. Doctors have worked hard for their money to get to this, for their money to get into the position that they're in.
Yep.
You don't want it to go to waste.
Yeah.
And I think if they've got a good plan and understanding of why they're doing what they're doing, and avoiding falling into this wealth trap that we've seen so many fall into, we've seen a lot of success stories as well. So the point I get out of this is we really need to understand, one, what is your primary objective, right? But then tying that in with the right time frame for the asset class to meet those objectives. But I want to take a step back because you talked about education bonds, right? I've got 2 kids, and education expenses are going through the roof. Yes.
When do you actually need to start planning for these bonds? Are you doing it from when they're actually born, or are you doing it later when they're about to start high school? What's the time frame?
Look, there's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's certain rules that apply to these bonds. So the first one is you've got to have held it for a period longer than 10 years.
Okay.
And there's also minimum and maximum amounts that you can put in. So if you started with $10,000, I believe the maximum that you can put in next year into that particular bond is 125% of that initial investment. Right? If you put in 10 grand today, next year you can put in 12,500. And you can so on and so forth and build on that. Yes, you can start a new bond, but I guess to unlock the tax-free status, you've got to stay within that initial bond that you've sourced for 10 years. Now, the 10-year rule is not necessarily completely tax-free, and a lot of people get this misconception wrong. It's actually taxed. So earnings are still taxed within the bond structure at 30%.
Yeah.
Now, capital gains is taxed, income is taxed. All of those things are taxed now within that structure. So you are still paying tax on the earnings of that. But where the magic happens is when you decide after 10 years to cash that out.
Yeah.
If, let's say, and just really round numbers, you put in $500,000 again at the start of this year and you cash it out in 10 and you cash out $1 million, your 500K is now tax-free if it's in this structure when you pull it out. If it was in any other structure, you'd be paying tax on the $500,000 capital gain that you have earned. That's the magic of the structure. So when it comes to when do we actually start this process, again, it comes back to just the objective. If you're planning to have kids and are you planning to support them through university, the earlier you start, the bigger the compounding effect on that capital gain, right? So that's probably to answer your question, when do we start? It comes back to what's the objective? Is it to help support them through university? Should we start well before they start school? Absolutely. Because most doctors will want their kids to go to medical school, I'm sure. that's not you got to start saving today. It's, again, creating a timeline of buckets. Bucket number one, that's cash. Number two might be your fixed income assets. Bucket three might be long-term shares, property, assets that will sit inside your superannuation for a very, very long time that you don't need to think about or worry about at all.